Today, we're diving into a crisis that so often thrives in the shadows: relationship abuse. It's way more common than most of us realize, and we're going to explore how a new AI tool is stepping in to offer a completely new kind of support for survivors. So, let's start by getting a handle on the true scale of this issue. All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start by uncovering the true scale of what is really a hidden epidemic. Then we'll get into the psychology that keeps people trapped and look at why traditional support systems, well, why they often fall short. From there, we'll introduce an AI ally named Amy, see how it actually works, and then zoom out to look at the bigger picture of how tech can help build a safer future. Okay, so first things first. Let's talk about the sheer scale of this problem. There's this huge gap between how common relationship abuse actually is and how common we think it is. And honestly, the reality is pretty staggering. Let me just ask you point blank. Do you think relationship abuse is rare? Something that happens to other people? For a long time, I think a lot of us were led to believe that. But the data tells a completely different story. Just look at this number. 12 million. That is how many people just in the United States are expected to go through some form of relationship abuse this year. We're not talking over a decade. We're talking about this year alone. It's a number so massive it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around it. And to put that into perspective, let's look at this comparison. We all know how widespread breast cancer is, right? It's a global health crisis with about 4 million diagnoses a year. But look at this chart. The number of people experiencing relationship abuse in the US alone is 3 times that number. That's the scale of the crisis we are talking about. It's enormous. So if this is happening to 12 million people, the big question is, why don't we hear about it more? Well, the answer is deep in the complex and, frankly, insidious psychology of abuse, which is basically designed to keep itself a secret. This quote from a survivor, Sarah Adams Mara, it just cuts right to the heart of it. Abusers are masters at making their targets blame themselves. This creates this powerful, toxic mix of shame and confusion, and it convinces the victim that they are the problem, which of course stops them from ever speaking out. You've probably heard the boiling the frog analogy, right? Well, it's a terrifyingly accurate way to describe one of the core tactics. Abuse almost never starts with a big explosion. The control, the manipulation, the isolation, it all creeps in so subtly and escalates so gradually that the person doesn't even realize the danger they're in until they are completely trapped. And then there's this other powerful tactic. You could call it the Trojan horse method. An abuser starts by building trust. They learn your hopes, your dreams, your fears, your biggest vulnerabilities. And then they use all that intimate knowledge to sneak in these control tactics, often disguising them as acts of love or concern, so you don't even see it happening. So this brings us to a really critical problem. When someone does manage to recognize what's happening and they decide to get help, they often find themselves facing a system that just wasn't built for them. And that creates this massive gap in care. And here's the crucial point. Our traditional support systems, things like shelters and hotlines, they operate on a crisis model. They are absolutely life-saving resources, but they're designed as a last resort for people in immediate physical danger. But what about everyone else? What about that huge majority of people who are in that slow boil of psychological or financial abuse? There's a giant need for support that's accessible and preventative, something that can step in way, way earlier. And this is exactly where technology is starting to enter the picture. It's offering a new kind of solution that's designed to fill that very gap. It's an AI-powered tool, an ally, called Amy. So what is Amy? Well, think of it as an AI confidant. It's not a general chatbot, it's a specialized tool. It's been specifically trained to be a private, secure, and trauma-informed space where somebody can process what's going on in their relationship, whether they're just starting to have some concerns or they're dealing with the aftermath. Okay, so I know you might be thinking, how can an AI possibly provide meaningful support in such a sensitive, human area? To understand that, let's take a look under the hood and see exactly how this technology works. The process for someone using it is really straightforward and, most importantly, empowering. It all starts with a private chat. The AI then offers validation and helps the user find the words for what they're going through. From there, it helps them securely document what's happened, which is so crucial for identifying patterns and, if they need to, making a plan.
Now, what's really interesting here is what makes Amy so different from a generic AI. It's been specifically trained on the very subtle tactics of coercive control. That's that whole pattern of intimidation, degradation, and isolation that abusers use. This specialized training means its AI-powered journaling can create documentation that's actually structured for legal settings. It takes these chaotic, unstructured experiences and organizes them into clear timelines. And, maybe most importantly, it's built from the ground up to be strictly private and confidential.
And to make sure it's both accessible and safe, there are two tiers. The free version gives you unlimited anonymous chats that disappear the second you close the window. That's a critical safety feature. Then, the premium account is for people who can safely store their information. It saves your history, it remembers your story so you don't have to keep repeating it, and it unlocks the full power of that AI-assisted journaling.
So what does all this add up to? Well, by using technology in this really focused way, we have a real opportunity to fundamentally change how people get help, and that could create a much safer future for millions.
This quote from Amy's creator, Anne Wintermute, it just sums up the entire mission perfectly. The shame, the fear, the confusion, those are all huge barriers to telling someone what's happening. A tool that is safe, private, and completely non-judgmental, well, that can lower that barrier and let people start getting help much, much sooner.
And, so often, the very first and most powerful step is simply validation. For someone who has been made to doubt their own reality, just having an external source confirm that their gut feeling is right, that what they're feeling is real and it has a name, that is incredibly empowering. It can be the spark that starts the whole journey towards safety and healing.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other hidden problems in our society could this kind of thoughtful, focused technology help us bring into the light?